In this video, I want to share 5 tips with you on how you can live a courageous life as a man, and we're starting right now. Praise the Lord, everyone, and welcome to Real Man Rising YouTube channel. I'm your host, Walter Strong, where we share helpful tips to inspire men like yourself to lead by love and integrity in your homes. And as I said this evening in our opening, we're going to be talking about 5 tips on helping you to live a courageous life as a man. So if you're new here this evening, let me know in the chat where you're watching me from. And if you're watching the replay, give me a hashtag team replay. As we get into this content, we're going to be sharing the importance of what it means to live as a courageous man in these times, to live a life of courage as a man. So do me a favor, grab a pen, grab a pad. It's time to go to work as we get into these 5 important tips. What does it mean to live a courageous life as a man of God? What does it mean to live a life of courage as a real man? That's what we're going to get into. And so my first tip is simply this: you have to be willing to hold on to the wheel and don't let go. You have to be willing to hold on to the wheel and not let go as a man to live a courageous life. Now, when I speak about the word will, I'm not talking about WILL, but as you can see in my notes, I'm talking about WHEEL, like a steering wheel, when you hold on to the wheel of a car and you don't let go. If you've ever seen the opening scene of the movie Courageous, it starts with an attempted carjacking of a man's truck who's at a gas station. He's just finished pumping his gas to fill up his tank. He turns on the engine of the truck, and before departing, he decides to want to clean his front windshield with a squeegee and some windshield wiper fluid. Well, as he reaches over to where the squeegee is, he realizes that there is not sufficient amount of fluid to do what he's looking to do. So he just reaches over to the other part of the where the pumps are at, and where a second squeegee of windshield wiper fluid. Well, as he's attempting to do this, he's unaware that during the whole time he was pumping gas, that there was a gentleman in the background observing and watching him while he was pumping his gas, seeking an opportunity to carjack his vehicle from him. Well, as he makes his way to where the other squeegee and windshield wiper fluid is, he sprints real quick to jump into the man's truck and takes off. Well, as the gentleman sees what's going on, he then takes pursuit of the vehicle, which he's able to catch up very quickly to the truck because it hasn't accelerated at a speed yet, but he is determined not to let this gentleman get away with his truck. And some would say, man, it's just a truck. It can be replaced. If you have a car alarm system, clearly they should be able to recover your vehicle. But that wasn't the reason why he was running so determined to catch up to this man and to grab hold of the wheel, which he was successful in doing, and begin to, in a struggle, to get control of the vehicle to stop it. The gentleman strikes the gentleman who's hanging on for dear life, where vehicles are oncoming traffic is coming at him. He's trying to prevent himself from being hit or thrown from the vehicle and being injured or hit, but he's successful in causing the vehicle to veer off the road and causing it to crash. Well, at the impact, it throws him from the vehicle. The gentleman who attempted to steal the person's truck exits the truck and gets into a second getaway car that was following them the entire time, and they speed off. Where onlookers who saw this whole thing take place begin to come to his aid to encourage him to stay calm and stay where he was until medical assistance would arrive. but he was too determined to stay where he was. Though injured, he begins to make his way to the back of the truck, which exposes to the viewers and the audience of the movie what was the real intent of why he was so determined in catching the truck and holding on to the wheel and not letting go. Well, once the back door of the truck is exposed and open, we find his little son in the car seat, safe, uninjured, traumatized by the impact of the car accident, crying, but he's okay. And we begin to see the real reason why he wasn't willing to let go of the wheel. If you're going to be a man of courage, you have to be determined not to let go of the wheel in your life. For the wheel represents to me and you our faith in God, our responsibility to our family as husband and father, and it represents to me and you our word and integrity. I'll say that again. The will represents to me and you our faith in God, our responsibility to our family as husband and father, and being a man of integrity who's willing to hold and to keep his word. Are you a man who's willing? If you're going to live a courageous life, are you willing to hold on to the wheel and not let go in the face of adversity? It's just as this man did in the opening scene of the movie. Are you willing to hold on to the wheel? My next tip, if you're going to live a courageous life as a man, is you must be willing to be a man of faith and having a relationship with God. You have to be willing to hold on to your faith. Throughout the movie, there are very important lessons that the movie Courageous teaches us about holding on to the will and being a man of courage and being a man of faith. One in particular was the gentleman named Javier, who was married, who had a wife, and who had two young children, but they were struggling. They were struggling because he was constantly being in the work world of construction. Unfortunately, based on seniority, he would end up being in situations where he would be let go because he hadn't been there as long, though he was a hard worker. He came to work, he did what he had to do, but he would constantly be in the situation, he always got the short end of the stick. And so the family was faced with financial challenges. The family was faced with being able to put food on the table. The family was faced with challenges in being able to be able to keep a roof over their heads. But he still held on to his faith. At one point in the movie, and seeking to go and find work, which was promised to him, once he finally gets there, he finds out that the opportunity is no longer there. And now he's walking down the street, and in Spanish, he's talking to God, but we can understand that clearly he was praying and pouring his heart out to God because his faith was being tested. Have you ever been in the place as a man living a life of courage when your faith has truly been tested? And we're going to get more into testing in a moment. But has your faith been challenged? Have you ever felt like your faith that you trusted in God was on trial, and you had an enemy, an adversary who was accusing you in the courtroom of life because you were simply trying to be a man who would live a courageous life and having faith in God? But ultimately, in the movie, he ends up finding work, and he ultimately ends up finding gainful employment. But during the whole time, his faith was being tested. Our faith as men in God will be tested. We are living truly in testing times where our faith is being tested. Our faith is being tried to determine, do we truly, truly have faith in God for him being God and who he is? Or are we having faith in God because we want stuff from him? Do we truly have faith in God for him being God, our Father? Or do we have faith in God because we just simply want stuff from him? If you're going to live a courageous life as a man, you have to be willing to hold on to the will and not let go. And you have to be willing to have faith in God for who he is and not for what he can give you. Tip number two, if you're going to Tip number three, if you're going to live a courageous life as a man, you must be willing to hold on to the will for your family. You must be willing to live a courageous life for your family. Your family, your family, family is something you must be willing to fight for. Family is something you must be willing to hold on to the will for, despite whatever opposition or challenges. Let's go back to the opening scene of the movie. We don't really truly understand why he was in pursuit of the vehicle. Certainly, he could have easily gotten another vehicle, another truck, but clearly the motivation was much greater, that he would put himself at risk. And what was that willingness that he was willing to put himself at risk for? It was his son. Are you willing to hold on to the will for your family in the face of challenges, in the face of adversity? Are you willing to live a courageous life as a man and being a man of courage? If this is making sense to you, do me a favor. Let me know where you're watching me from. Give me a hashtag making sense. Hashtag making sense in the chat for me. So you have to be willing to be a man who's going to live a life of courage and not let the wheel go. You have to be willing to if your relationship with your son is strained as a father, and you clearly see that the communications lines have broken down, you can't give up of the father for the whole purpose because you have a better relationship with your daughter. What you're doing in as a dad is you're showing favoritism. You're willing to do all the things that daddy little girl is asking of you, but when it comes to your son and partaking in being involved in something that's important to him, the answer is always no. The answer is that's too hard. That's going to ask too much of me. But when it comes to daddy's little girl, she's got you wrapped around your finger. Right? She's got you wrapped around her finger. And you always say yes. And as a result, now your relationship with your son is strained. But I'm here to tell you, if you're going to live a life of courage, if you're going to be a man of courage, if you're going to be a man who's going to live a courageous life, you can't let go of the will when it comes to family. You can't go hide in your man cave when things get tough between you and your son and just hide there until he goes in the room and go plays video games. You have to be willing to live a courageous life and do what it takes to repair your relationship with your son. I see several people that are joining me this evening. Let me know in the chat where you're watching me from. Give me a hashtag Team Live in the chat. So we talked about being willing to hold on to the will, being willing to be a man of faith who has a relationship with God, not having faith in God for stuff that you want from him. Yes, we serve a God who answers prayer, but we have faith in God because of who he is, not because of what we want from him. Did you not know that in the 23rd Psalms it says, the Lord is my shepherd? I shall not want. Notice, I shall not want doesn't come before the Lord is my shepherd. David is telling me and you that I have a personal relationship, just as a shepherd had a relationship with sheep. And because out of that relationship, he said, I shall not want. So faith, being willing to hold on to the will for your family. You also have to be willing to be a man of courage who lives courageously when it comes to your integrity. When you're working on the job and you have aspirations to get a promotion and a raise, and you're approached by management or approached by another employee to say, hey, do me a favor, I'm leaving early, can you clock me out at 3 o'clock, when clearly they've left at 2:30, and they come to you to ask you to do this? Will you be willing to hold on to the will and to hold on to your integrity and being a man of courage? You have to be willing to hold on to your integrity when you sit at the time of being reviewed on your job and you're seeking the opportunity to get a merit pay increase, and the employer begins to say, I have this opportunity for you, and I on the reporting I want you to say that 17 items initially came in, but you're only going to report 16 because there's a purpose for the other one, and the manager wants you to be dishonest. Will you be willing to hold on to the will and be a man of courage and say, I can't lie or dishonor my faith in God or dishonor my family? So, family, integrity, but also being willing to be responsible when you've made mistakes as a man. One of my many favorite scenes in the movie Courageours, after they've done their ceremony of standing for the courage resolution, one of the gentlemen who we learned that early in his child life, early in his life in college, ends up having a daughter. Initially, he wanted the young lady to take care of it. Now, I realize we're living in this political climate and time where um, a woman's right is truly being an issue in the times that we're living in. So I'm very sensitive to that and to what I'm finna say. But when he tells the young lady take care of it, he's simply telling the woman to have an abortion. And when she chooses not to have the abortion, because a woman has a right to her body and the decision she wants to make, but he challenges her to say, if you want to be with me in the moment of pleasure, of enjoyment that he wanted from her, he didn't want to take responsibility in being a father. So he tells her to take care of her, but she chooses not to. And then he makes the decision, we learn in the movie, that he decides to abandon her and abandon his child. He ends up learning that she's ended up having a daughter, but he abandons them both. He shows no willingness for financial assistance to help the young lady, and he abandons them. Well, after his life-changing experience in his relationship with God and his commitment to be a man of courage, he decides to sit down and to write this young lady a letter and explain how his life has been impacted and changed through his relationship with God. And he begins to explain and to share his remorsefulness and his contrition and giving an apology for abandoning her and abandoning his daughter. And he basically ends the letter with the hopes of being able to rebuild her trust. And ultimately in the movie, as it comes to an end, he gets that opportunity. He starts to send money to help financially support his daughter. And after a period of time, he gets the chance to meet her. What am I saying? If you are going to be a man of courage, if you're going to be a man who lives a courageous life, you must be willing to take responsibility for your actions and your mistakes. I'll say that again. If you're going to be a man who's going to be responsible for your actions and your mistakes, you must be willing to live a life of courage, because it took courage. It took courage to be able to write this young lady this letter after many years of him leaving and forsaking her and abandoning his responsibility to his child. Too many times, as immature men, not real men, we do the same thing. We do the same thing. We become caught in the moment of pleasure with the one that we are with. And then when she comes to me and you saying that they're pregnant, instead of us being willing to take responsibility and saying, okay, I have to be a man, I have to be a father, we forsake and abandon our seeds. What about you in the chat that are watching me this evening? What about you in the chat? Which of these tips that am I saying to you in the chat tonight is resonating and connecting with you? Let me know in the chat. Is it holding on to the will? Is it being a man of faith? Is it being a man of integrity? Is it being willing to be responsible? And then my final point tonight, if you're going to be a man who lives a courageous life and live a life of courage, you have to understand there are times in life that all of these things that you hold dear to you and holding on to the will, your faith, your family, and integrity will be tested. It will be tested. But it's important to understand God is not the one who's testing us. God is not the one who's tempting us. But God is faithful in his grace, will allow our faith and our family and our integrity to be tested so that we can understand that he is the one that makes our faith strong. He is the one who helps us to be a great husband and a devoted father. And you can't do these things unless you first go through a test. Think back when you were in high school. Think back when you were in middle school and the test was being given. And you were sitting in the classroom, and if you did your homework and if you did your studying like you should have, when the test and the exam is given out, when the final exam is being given out, notice no one in the class is talking. No one can ask the teacher, the instructor, questions during when the exam is going on, when the final exam. There's complete silence. It's time to produce what you've learned. So sometimes when we go through tests in our faith, sometimes when we go through tests in our family, sometimes when we go through tests in our finances, it's to show what we learn and what we trust and believe in God. If we're going to be a man who lives a courageous life. You said, I'm praying, and God is silent. But because just as God is silent does not mean he's still not moving. He's still actively involved in your life behind the scenes, though you don't see him moving. He's still moving. Because the test comes to reveal to me and you what we truly know and what we believe about God, about ourselves, about family. We say if we're a man of integrity, our integrity is going to be tested. If we say that we are a man of courage, our courage will be tested. To stand strong in the face of fear and adversity, sometimes being tested is not so much for me and you, but the faith and courage is needed because someone else is depending on me and you. Think about firefighters. Firefighters have a commitment to serve and to help and to preserve life, even at the price of running into a burning building. The courage because someone else is depending on them. Who is depending on you? For you to have courage to run into your burning building of your life. Who's looking to you? Is it your wife? Is it your son? Is it your daughter? Who's looking to you to run into the burning building and to be a man of courage, to bring them to safety? Hey, if you're getting great value out of this episode of Man Talk Live, as we're talking about living a life of courage, being a man who lives a courageous life, do me a favor, click the like button for me. If you're watching me on YouTube, click that like button for me. There's a share button there. Share this on your favorite social media platform. And if you're new to Real Men Rising YouTube channel, where we share helpful tips to inspire men to lead by love and integrity, subscribe to the channel. Click the alert notification button and be a part of the conversation of real men that are rising up to make a difference, to raise the standard of manhood, not in just in these times, but in the next generation to come. So that's the content this evening. In summary, we've talked about if you're going to be a man who lives a courageous life, you have to be willing to hold on to the wheel and not let go. You have to be willing to be a man of faith. You have to be willing to be a man who's going to protect and be there for your family. Being a man of integrity, being a man who's responsible to be responsible for your actions and your past mistakes. And you must be willing to pass the test. So that's the content. If you have any questions for me, do me a favor. Those of you who are watching me, let me know in the chat by giving me a Q in front of the question. And if you have a comment, put a C in front of the comment so that I can answer any question that you may have or acknowledge any comment that you have by pulling it up here on the screen. Because my desire for you as a man is simply you have to be willing to hold on to the wheel and not let go. Holding on to the wheel and not letting go will help you to be a man who lives a courageous life, will help you to have faith and stand for your family and be a man of integrity, even in the face of testing. If we go back to the movie of Courageours, there's a scene in the movie where the gentleman, 9-year-old daughter is killed in a car accident. But prior to her death, one of the requests that she had for her daddy was that he would dance with her. Has your daughter ever asked you to dance with her? Those of you who are dads who have daughters who are daddy's little girl, have your daughter made a request to you? And yet, because of the macho man in you, you refuse? So this is what this gentleman does. And then unfortunately, later on in the movie, she gets killed. And now he's dealing with regret. He's dealing with the guilt that when his daughter asked him to dance, he wouldn't dance. So he has to go through this grieving process, this mourning process. He has to seek counseling from his pastor. But ultimately, him and his wife, they get through it. And he begins to understand that though his daughter has been tragically killed, he still has a son. And he needed to understand that his son was grieving the loss of his sister. Too many of us dads, we get in our man caves and we're going through and we shut the door and we don't come out. And our family needs us. I'm here to tell you tonight, man, your family needs you. I'm here to tell you, dad, your son needs you. I'm here to tell you, dad, your daughter wants to dance with you. I don't see any questions or any comments. So we're going to bring this episode of Man Talk Live to a close. But I want to thank you for joining this episode. When you get a chance on the channel, check out some of our content. We have some videos on the importance of why you need to protect your peace as a man. As men, we're taught to protect a lot of things in our lives. We're taught to protect our cars by having the right car insurance and proper car alarm system. Low jack, you remember low jack? So when a criminal steals your vehicle, low jack would be initiated and the police could find your vehicle. We're taught to protect our cars. We're taught to protect our money by having a PIN number and knowing our user ID and password so no one gets into our account. We're taught to protect our homes. But did you know, as men, the one thing that we are not encouraged the most is to protect our peace, to protect our mental health? We're living in a time where we are in a mental health crisis. Are you protecting your peace? So when you get a chance, check out that content and more here on the channel. And so if there are no comments or questions, I'm just going to check one more time. Don't see anything. We're going to bring this episode of Man Talk Live to a close. So in my parting, I want to simply encourage you. You may feel discouraged. You may feel broken in your heart. But always remember, broken crayons still color. In the hands of little children, in their minds, they can create their greatest masterpieces with broken crayons. The message simply is that we need to humble ourselves as little children, as men. And in the hands of God, He can create our life a greater masterpiece and help our lives to steal color. Hey, subscribe to the channel. Click the alert notification button. Be a part of the conversation of real men raising the standard of manhood. We'll talk to you next Saturday at 8 p.m.